Welcome to the voice of all things. I know everyone is eagerly waiting for the next big break in the news about the One Piece live action, but unfortunately, at the time of recording this video, there is no news. So instead, we're going to be talking about some other big news that is coming up, the chapter 1000 of One Piece, which I personally am very hyped about. Now, of course, a lot of people have been saying lately that we have no reason to be hyped about chapter 1000. Nothing that great really ever happens at the big 100 benchmarks. But you know what? I'm here to tell them they're wrong. Every 100 benchmark has been a big deal in One Piece, and this one will be no different. So let's talk about why. We're going to go over all of the past chapters, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, and so on, and see why 1000 is going to be amazing. First off, chapter 100, The Legend Begins. First of all, that is an epic title, and we are introduced right off the bat to Dragon for the first time, a character that at the time we did not know why he'd be important, but now we know how big of an impact he has on the One Piece world as the world's most wanted man. While the scenes with Buggy, Smoker, and Tashigi are all very amazing, the end of the chapter is where things really get exciting, because we get one of the most iconic scenes in the series, where each of the Straw Hats declares their dream, declares how the series is going to end for them, and they set off for the Grand Line. This is really the turning point of the series, where things stop being an episodic adventure going to islands where slightly unusual things happen, to charging into a sea full of sea kings, almost crashing into a mountain-sized whale, meeting an old man in the stomach of that whale. This is where the series really becomes One Piece. The prologue has ended, the quest for One Piece has begun. Chapter 200 is called Water Luffy. Now, this chapter is actually very exciting, not just because it's the first time we've seen one of Luffy's alternate forms, but because this is the first time we've really seen Luffy get a leg up on one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Characters that we were introduced to as being these unstoppable creatures, these monsters, these great pirates like Mihawk, the legendary Jinbei. Then we see Crocodile, a Logia, someone Luffy can't touch, can't fight. And just before this chapter begins, we get Luffy's first actual blow on Crocodile. Then 200 kicks off, and their fight begins in earnest. We get to see Luffy actually for the first time seeming like he's going to win the fight against the most powerful opponent he has ever seen. Chapter 300 is entitled Symphony, and although just before this, we got to see Luffy's final blow against Neru, it's this chapter where we get to see all of the Skypians having their long battle finally resolved. We get to see the resolution of this very exciting arc. And most excitingly, we get something that isn't directly tied to Luffy's adventure, but is one of the most amazing mysteries in One Piece. We get to see Neru fly to the moon, something that to this day we still have no idea what's going on. Why is he able to breathe on the moon? Why did he go to the moon? We had been teased about him wanting to go to some fairy Earth since almost the beginning of Skypiea, and we had no idea what that meant until we just see him fly up there in his little ship to the moon. And that is chapter 300, Symphony. I don't know if I said the title earlier, but there it is. One Piece chapter 400, The Releasing Key. Chapter 400 is amazing. Chapter 400 is right after we get to have Robin's tearful declaration of her desire to live. Then we get to see Frankie burn the blueprints for the ultimate weapon Pluton. Then in chapter 400, we finally get the Straw Hats entering into Enies lobby and beginning some of the most epic fights in the entire series. 400 is really a milestone in the series, as it sits directly in the middle of what is literally the highlight of the series for most people. Chapter 500. Now this is one absolutely no one's going to disagree on. The Embers of History. While most of this chapter seems somewhat uneventful, they're searching for Cammy who's been kidnapped. It ends with the introduction of Silver's Raleigh, the king's right hand. And this introduction begins us spiraling into a series of events that change One Piece forever. It really is an epic moment. Then there's chapter 600, The Island of New Beginnings. Chapter 600 is part of the Straw Hats reuniting arc, right after the time skip. It is the chapter where Brook declares to the entire world that yes, the Straw Hats are back and that Luffy will be the king of the pirates. The crew doesn't set sail this chapter to the new world, but still, this chapter is part of a very, very short, I think only 4 or 5 chapter arc that really blew all of us away. Chapter 700 is entitled His Momentum and starts off with the world learning the news that Doflamingo has stepped down as a warlord of the sea, and it kicks off the Dressrosa arc, the longest arc in One Piece history up until now. In this chapter, we get to also see that Dofi has obtained the Mera Mera fruit, and intends on using it to split up Law and Luffy's alliance. This chapter sets up so many enormous things, including that Buggy is now one of the warlords of the sea, and really gets us kicked off into this enormous epic adventure that is Dressrosa. Then, my favorite, personally, out of all of these is chapter 800, Sun's Cups. This is a chapter that, from the title, you probably realized why it's so amazing. This is the chapter where 5,600 people are added to Luffy's crew. This is the chapter where the Straw Hat Grand Fleet is set up, and where Luffy's rise to world power really begins. At the end of the chapter, the narrator actually also informs us that these underlings of Luffy will start an unprecedented incident. The last time the narrator told us something like that was at Ace's capture, which led to the Marineford War. So this is really one of the most epic chapters in the series. Now, chapter 900, Bad End Musical, is not my favorite chapter. It's probably one of my least favorite chapters, and definitely my least favorite chapter on this list, but it's undeniably very important. My personal qualm with this is the fake destruction of the Sunny at the end of the chapter, but the chapter itself is set up to be so different from any other chapter. It includes Big Mom's final tasting of that cake, which is technically Big Mom's defeat, and really marks one of the most dramatic parts of the Straw Hats' escape from Whole Cake Island. So, with all that in mind, what should we expect from chapter 1000? Well, if you've been paying attention, you probably notice a trend. Not all of these chapters necessarily had the most epic moments during the chapter itself, but were usually the aftermath or the introduction to something amazing. So, now that we're in Wano, Luffy is rushing up to meet Kaido. Kaido has moved the entire island they're on to another location, and so many other pieces are falling together to make for an epic clash with not just one, but two of the emperors of the sea. Chapter 1000 is going to be the gateway to an epic event, unlike anything we've seen so far in One Piece. And it's only a few weeks away.
Yo! Gaigo! Hey there!
Don't leave without subbing.
Hey there!
Don't leave without liking.
Hey there!
Don't forget to comment. Hit the bell, hit the bell, hit the bell.